Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Tex McIver? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case. I'll move to the timeline of the alleged crime, then offer my analysis. Claude Lee McIver III was born on May 12, 1947, and lived in Georgia. He went by the name Tex. He worked as a labor and employment attorney. He was financially successful, but had gone through an expensive divorce. Tex owned property in Putnam County, Georgia, which he referred to as the ranch. When he was working on a settlement agreement involving an airport, he met a woman named Diane. She was a few years younger than him, having been born in 1953. Like Tex, Diane had been married before, and she was financially successful. She was the owner of a real estate business and the owner or part owner of 3 other businesses. The couple formed a romantic relationship, and about 5 years later, in November 2005, they married. The couple kept all of their finances separate. They spent many of their weekends at the ranch, where they would throw lavish parties. Now moving to the timeline of the alleged crime. On Sunday, September 25, 2016, Tex, Diane, and a friend of theirs named Danny Joe Carter were at the Putnam County Ranch enjoying a weekend away. The 3 of them spent the afternoon playing golf and then drove back to Atlanta in a white 2013 Ford Expedition. This is a full-size SUV. They stopped at a Longhorn Steakhouse where Tex and Diane consumed wine. Danny Joe Carter did not consume any alcohol, therefore she drove the Ford Expedition. Diane was in the front passenger seat, and Tex was in the rear seat behind Diane. The trio encountered heavy traffic on Interstate 85 as they were trying to get to Diane's condominium. Danny Joe said that they needed to exit. Diane said something to Tex, but he did not respond. Diane then told Danny Joe to exit at Edgewood Avenue. According to Tex, he was asleep in the back seat and woke up after Danny Joe took the exit ramp. Tex did not believe that this area of the city was safe. He said, quote, "Girls, I wish you hadn't done this. This is a really bad area," unquote. Tex then asked his wife to hand him his firearm, which had been in the center console. The weapon was a Smith & Wesson Model 638. This is a 5-shot revolver chambered in .38 Special. This revolver is a popular choice for concealed carry. It weighs under a pound and is fairly small. The revolver was in a plastic grocery bag when Diane handed it to Tex. He put the gun on his lap. It was still in the bag. Danny Joe continued to drive the vehicle. Diane told her to turn on Piedmont Road and continue north. Danny Joe assumed that Tex had fallen asleep again because he did not take part in the conversation. A few minutes later, Danny Joe stopped at a traffic light at 14th Street. She was still on Piedmont Road. She heard several clicking sounds and asked Diane what she was doing. Diane responded that she was locking the doors. Right at this moment, Tex fired a single round from the Smith & Wesson revolver. The bullet traveled through the front passenger seat where Diane was sitting and struck Diane in the back. Diane turned around and said, "Tex, what did you do?" He responded, "The gun discharged." Danny Joe could see that Tex was still holding the revolver and that it was still in the plastic bag. Tex told Danny to drive to Emory University Hospital on Clifton Road. This was one of 4 hospitals near their location. The hospital Tex selected was the farthest away of the 4. After arriving at the hospital, Diane told physicians that the shooting was an accident. Danny Joe said the same thing to the police. Tex told 2 different stories about what happened. He told the police that he fell asleep with the gun in his lap and it somehow discharged. And he told the staff at the hospital the gun discharged accidentally when the SUV hit a bump in the road. Tex was initially indicted for manslaughter. His bond was revoked after a Glock pistol was found in a sock drawer in his condominium. After being sent to jail, Tex was indicted for malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, and 3 counts of influencing a witness. His trial lasted from March 5 to April 23, 2018. The judge acquitted him of 2 counts of influencing a witness. The jury found Tex not guilty of malice murder, but guilty of felony murder, aggravated assault, the firearm charge, and the remaining count of influencing a witness. Tex was sentenced to life in prison for the felony murder conviction. The aggravated assault count merged with the felony murder count. Tex received 5 years for influencing a witness and a suspended sentence of 5 years for the firearm charge, both to be served concurrently. By finding him guilty of felony murder, the jury was saying that they believed that he intended to shoot his wife, but did not intend to kill her. If they believed that he intended to shoot her and he intended to kill her, that would have been malice murder. In June of 2022, the Georgia Supreme Court reversed both the felony murder and firearm possession convictions. The Georgia Supreme Court said that the trial court made a mistake by not allowing the jury to consider a misdemeanor version of involuntary manslaughter. Now moving to my analysis. Was Tex McIver guilty of murder? Regardless of his conviction being overturned, the state of Georgia believes that he was. There are others who believe there was no way he intentionally killed his wife. Let's take a look at the factors both for and against the idea that Tex was guilty, starting with the inculpatory factors. In February of 1990, when Tex was married to his first wife, they were at home when she advised him that a Ford Mustang was at the end of their cul-de-sac. Tex retrieved a Glock semi-automatic pistol and approached the vehicle's occupants. They were teenagers. They said he fired 1 time into the air and 2 times into the vehicle, and released his 2 German Shepherds to chase them. The teenagers drove away and were not injured. Tex claimed that the driver had tried to run him over, which of course doesn't explain releasing the German Shepherds. Did he expect the dogs to jump in the Mustang and slam on the brake or turn the wheel? A grand jury found probable cause to indict Tex, but the prosecutor said that the matter had been settled between the parties. Tex agreed to pay for the damage to the Mustang. Now moving to 2016. There is no question that Tex McIver shot and killed his wife Diane using a revolver that he owned. The Smith & Wesson Model 638 was in good working order. This particular model has an enclosed hammer, but enough of the hammer is exposed so that a person can cock the hammer with their thumb. This feature means that the weapon can be pulled from a pocket without getting snagged, but also retains the single action firing option. It can be fired single or double action. When the trigger is pulled with the hammer cocked, 2.25 pounds of force is required. If the gun is fired double action, meaning the operator simply pulls the trigger, 12.25 pounds of force is required on the trigger. It would be extremely irregular and unsafe to pull the hammer back while seated in the back of an SUV driving through a city. An operator would normally only cock the hammer right before firing the weapon. If Tex fired double action, this act was almost certainly intentional. Furthermore, it was irresponsible to have the weapon pointed at another human being. He could have positioned the gun so that it was in a relatively safe direction. Moving on with other inculpatory factors, Tex suggested to Danny Jo that she could lie and say that she was never in the SUV. I'm not sure what his plan was here. Was the Ford Expedition supposed to be driving itself? How would his story have made sense without Danny Jo being in the vehicle? I think this would have been even worse for Tex, because why would he have been in the back seat if his wife was the only other person in the SUV with him? Tex had unusual financial dealings with his wife. Prior to getting married, Diane gave Tex a loan for $750,000. When they married, he gave her ownership interest in the ranch. In 2011, Diane issued another loan to Tex, this one for $350,000. It was secured by the ranch property. Essentially, Diane had the right to foreclose on the property anytime she wanted. She would have been the sole owner if she did that. Tex had some financial problems. Instead of receiving a share of the profits from the law firm where he worked, he had been moved over to salary. He told his friends that he did not have enough money to cover his expenses. Records indicated that Diane was giving Tex money transfers, which prevented him from having negative cash flow. Before Diane died, Tex had a net worth of about $1.5 million. After his wife died, this increased to somewhere between $3.6 and $6.9 million. Several months after Diane died, Tex used an auction company to sell her personal belongings, more than 2,000 items altogether, including over 500 pieces of jewelry and 121 fur coats. That's a lot of fur coats for one person. I guess she had a tendency to get really cold. Some people who interacted with Tex suggested he really didn't seem to be upset or grieving after killing his wife. Not long after her death, he mentioned putting her condominium on the market. He talked about if he could get a former girlfriend back, even though the former girlfriend was already married, and mentioned that he was thinking about trying to get a job in Oklahoma. Tex made a number of unusual statements, which may not be inculpatory, strictly speaking, but they don't really help his case. For example, a nurse was walking by Tex in the hallway of the hospital when she overheard him talking to someone. He said, "I was cleaning my gun in the bathroom when I shot her." So the rear seat of the Ford Expedition was his bathroom? This certainly doesn't help resale value. Tex told a friend of his that Diane died in a car accident. I guess this is sort of true, although not many people would call a shooting in a vehicle a car accident. This would be like a man killing his wife in the kitchen and calling it a baking accident, or killing her with a mop and calling it a cleaning accident. Now moving to the exculpatory evidence. People who knew Tex and Diane believed they had a good relationship. Danny Joe said that the couple was not arguing before the shooting. If Tex intentionally killed his wife, he chose an unusual way to do it. He shot her within a few miles of several major hospitals when a witness was sitting next to her. And he only shot her one time through a vehicle seat with a relatively weak pistol. There are a number of cartridges that are more powerful than 38 Special or 38 plus P, if that's what he was using. Why didn't he use a pistol chambered in a more powerful cartridge? For example, 9mm Parabellum, 45 caliber ACP, or .357 Magnum. The state suggested that he used a plastic bag to avoid gunshot residue, but again, there was a witness in the driver's seat of the SUV. Everyone knew that Tex was the shooter. There is no way he was going to convince somebody that he did not pull the trigger. An expert testified that Tex suffered from a sleep disorder. If he was startled awake, it may lead to involuntary movements. It's hard to believe this could cause him to pull the trigger, but it is technically possible. Tex did not control the sequence of events the night he killed his wife. For example, he did not tell Danny Joe to exit the interstate, and he did not tell her to turn onto Piedmont Road. When considering the evidence, do I think that Tex was guilty? I think in reality he was, but he was not guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of malice murder or felony murder. I think he was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of felony manslaughter. Moving to the next question, will the fact that Tex was acquitted of felony murder and the firearm charge matter? During the trial, the jury was allowed to consider felony involuntary manslaughter, but they were not allowed to consider a misdemeanor version of that crime. This is why his convictions were overturned. I agree that the jury should have been allowed to consider the lesser grade of involuntary manslaughter, but I'm not sure it would have changed the outcome. The jury decided to convict Tex of a crime more serious than felony involuntary manslaughter, so it's not really clear how offering a misdemeanor version of that charge would have helped him too much. I suppose his defense attorneys could have focused more on the idea that he was criminally negligent, so having that charge available might have influenced their strategy. Moving to the last question, what do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. I believe that Tex was under a lot of stress. Thoughts of losing the ranch to Diane were weighing heavy on his mind. Perhaps he felt as though Diane was running the show. He was at her mercy. She was threatening his sense of masculinity, competence, and his standing in the community. When Tex realized that Danny Joe exited into a neighborhood that he considered to be rough, he came up with a simple plan. He now had an excuse to put the pistol on his lap. He would pretend to be half asleep and pull the trigger. Tex decided to simply take his chances. He didn't know for certain that his wife would die, and he didn't know if he would go to prison, but at that point, he simply did not care. Either way. Those are my thoughts on the case of Tex McIver. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.